Hi, welcome to another episode of Webcam Sessions. This week we're going to talk about high G and low G ukuleles, what the difference is between them, and what I like between each one of them. So to start, let's go and talk about the actual difference. And the difference is the range. When you listen to a high G ukulele and you play just the G string, and then you listen to a low G and we play just the G string, you can hear that the low G sounds lower than the high G. Go figure, right? But if we look at a musical staff, just like we did on that episode where we talked about how the piano and the ukulele can relate to each other, if we look at a standard reentrant or high G ukulele tuning, the G note's going to be up here. The C note for the C string is going to be down here. The E string is going to be the E note right there, and the A is going to be higher than it all. You can see that the G string starting is actually higher than the C and the E, so it creates a non-linear tuning basically, right? Where we start at the top of the instrument and work our way down, and the pitch doesn't correspond to that direction. But if we look at the low G and we play the open G string, you'll notice it's all the way down here on that piano or musical staff. And we look at the C note on the C string, same place, E note same place, and A note same place. But because it starts with the G lower, it's going to create a more linear tuning, which is more like a guitar or a bass. It's just what's more typical. A mandolin, for instance, will be tuned in not the same way in terms of the same notes, the same way in that the lowest note will be the one closest to the top of the instrument, right? So that's pretty interesting because it makes the instrument different. You know, a high G and a low G ukulele sound quite different. And that's what's going to make some people prefer one over the other. Now, before we start looking at the difference in terms of sound, let's go ahead and take a little look at the tuning with the strings themselves. So a question that I get asked all the time is, for a low G ukulele, do I just tune my G string down? Or for a high G ukulele, do I just tune my low G up? And the answer is a resounding no. Whenever you're looking at high G versus low G, you have to make sure that you're using a string that's gauged for one of those. So if you look at my high G ukulele and you actually look at the G string itself, you'll notice it's nice and thin, and it's thin like the A string, the C string being thicker. The reason for this is because it's closer in pitch to that A string. So it's important that the high G string, again, is gauged correctly. But if you look at my low G ukulele, you'll actually notice the low G is what we call a wound string. So it's not a metal string, it's a nylon string that's wound, I believe in nickel, I might be wrong on that, but that woundness is going to make it thicker and it's going to increase the tension so that it can hold the tune of that low note. If I were to try to take my high G and tune it all the way down, it would be like playing with a noodle. It'd be very, very soft in terms of the tension. It wouldn't hold its tune and it wouldn't sound very good. But the other side, if I took my low G here and I tuned it all the way up to high G, I'd break the string off before it gets to that octave. So very important that you have the correct string for whichever you're trying to look for. One really important thing too is the nut, which is this white part here. The way that it's filed for the slot with the string is going to be reflected by how thick the string is. So if you're going from a high G to a low G, you might notice that the string will sit in the nut unevenly because the hole essentially isn't big enough. So you can actually file that if you want and want to be brave. I'd recommend going on Ukulele Underground forums, checking out the luthier section and reading some stuff about that. But it's something that might have to happen. Not always. Sometimes you'll put a low G on a high G uke and it fits perfect, but it's something to be aware of. So now, as far as the difference between these, if you listen to just basic chords, so if I just play a C chord, for instance, sounds nice, right? And I play just the C chord on my high G. Also sounds nice. But you'll notice that, objectively speaking, just strumming through, the low G is a thicker, more full sound, right? Now, the only reason for that is because the range is higher. Instead of the lowest note being the C note, like with a high G, it's going to be the G note. And that just makes it so that we're going over more of a span in terms of the range of the chord. So it is a fatter sound with a low G. And that causes a lot of people to really prefer them, right? Low G can give you this bigger sound with essentially minimal effort because all of the chords that you play with both of these are exactly the same because it's still a G note. It just depends on what octave it is. And this is the real strength of the low G ukulele, is if I were to play something like, let's say I play my C, F, and G. I'm getting this nice bass line of that open G to this A note, back to the G note. And I can play chords in different ways and get more of a response on them based on where I'm putting my fingers in terms of where the low G is. So if I play a C chord like this, 5, 4, 3, 3, and then I play a G chord like this, 4, 2, 3, 2, and then an F chord normal, and then a C chord normal again, you can hear it gives me this really rich bass line that if I did with the high G ukulele, it just wouldn't come through as well. Right? So that tends to be the big strength of the low G, and that's why it's often preferred for people that are playing more jazzy type of music, or again, just try and get those thicker voicings. So if you're playing something like Fly Me the Moon, it'll sound really nice with that low G, kind of creating more of a bass line, right? Really like that sound. But I actually prefer high G, right? I'm a high G player primarily. I do teach with the low G and use it, but not as much as the high G. And the reason is because the high G, even though the range is lesser, I feel like you have a lot more opportunity with it, just my opinion with it. And the reason is because this G string can serve two main functions. The first one is using a concept called campanella, and I hope to do a video on campanella style soon. But what campanella is essentially, it means bell-like in Italian, I believe. And that word is trying to describe a melody that's actually going to be played over multiple strings instead of just one. And the high G string allows you to sort of echo melody lines between the G and A strings to get this harp-like tone. So if I were playing some Bach, for instance, what I could do is put my melody over the G and the A strings instead of just the A. If I put it just with the A, it would be something like... But if I put it over the two strings, it'd be something like this. And that sound is just so much richer. I love having that opportunity with melody lines that I'm playing. But if that weren't enough, the other reason why I like the high G is you can create this drone effect. By kind of keeping that open G going within what you're strumming, you create this depth within your strum patterns that gives you not quite an off where you're not striking the strings or an on where you're striking all of them, but rather something in between. I call this technique ghost note strumming. And for a full tutorial with ghost note strumming, be sure and check out the course I did here with Ukulele Underground, the Ultimate Ukulele Strumming Course, where a whole module is spent on ghost note strumming, which again is really meant for that high G sound. And players like Aldrine here at Ukulele Underground and Jake Shimabukuro have been using this technique for years, and it's really, really cool to get this incredible sound out of your uke. For instance, everyone knows that While My Guitar Gently Weeps arrangement that Jake does. When he does that crazy cool strumming part, the way that he gets that full sound out of those chords isn't by strumming faster, it's by just filling in some of the blanks with this ghost note, essentially the thumb hitting the G string. And that's how the difference between strumming something like this could be more like this. Really, really cool. It's probably my absolute favorite technique to do on the ukulele, and many of the songs that I've written use that technique because it just is such a unique sound. You can't really hear that sort of sound with a guitar, and that's what makes the ukulele really special to me, is actually having that high G and that opportunity to create a thicker sound, which again, it's funny because the low G gives you a thicker sound by default based on the range. But using the high G as sort of a drone, or with that campanella style of melody playing, I think it can give you an even fatter sound. But again, it's all opinion. There are a lot of incredible players that prefer one or the other or play both, and they both certainly have their strengths and weaknesses to create the sound that you might be looking for. The two ukuleles I play the most are these two, and I've got this one strung with a low G, I've got this one strung with a high, and I love playing both of them. So it's pretty cool to see the different styles. Just to recap though, When you're playing chords, you're playing everything, it's exactly the same, right? So all your C chords, G chords, and F chords are going to be identical between these two. It just might sound a little bit different with the low G than it will the high G based on that sort of bass note. So both ukuleles are great types. I think that they're both, there's a lot of fighting that goes on in the online world of ukulele saying, no, low G is best, no, high G is best. I think they're both best, and it's just an opinion for which one you might prefer. I prefer high G, but I play both. And so let me know in the comments below if you prefer high G or low G, and if you have any certain techniques that you like to use on one or the other. And I'll see you next week for another episode of Webcam Sessions.